So let's talk about, I said corruption is far more accessible in Eastern Europe. The reason I said that is because firstly, I live in Romania, which is a beautiful country full of beautiful people. I was living there and people often say to me, why do you live in a corrupt country? And my argument was, every country's corrupt. If you think America is not corrupt, you are living in a bubble. The world is corrupt. England's corrupt. They're all corrupt. The EU is corrupt. Russia's corrupt. Every country's corrupt. I would rather live in a corrupt country, considering that they're all corrupt, with corruption that's more accessible to myself, than in a country where they're going to pretend there's law and order unless you reach a certain level, and then you can access the corruption. I'll give you a very simple example. If you are, let's say, the husband of a senator, for example, and you DUI, let's just make this up, hypothetical.
This would never happen.
This would never happen.
Course,
because,
yeah, for sure.
you know, like
this kind of stuff
America,
doesn't happen.
the greatest country in the world, there's no way that
husbands of senators don't drink. They
don't just DUI.
Yeah.
But let's imagine you did, right? In America, you get off with it scot-free. But if you're a single mother or you're a single parent and you're out there working a minimum wage job and you're trying your very, very hardest and you have kids to raise and you get a DUI, you're fucked. Now, I think it's kind of unfair that the corruption limit in a rich country, in this hypothetical super rich country, means that people at the absolute elite can do whatever they want and nobody else has access. I'll give you another example. Let's imagine you're in Serbia. Same scenario. You're a senator's husband and you get caught with a DUI. Of course, nothing's going to happen to you. But you're a normal person, you get caught with a DUI. Bro, I've had a hard day at work. I know I'm over the limit. I'm sorry. Here's 50 bucks. I'm sorry. I'm just going to drive straight home. All right, cool. Go home. Bam. Accessible corruption. To me, that's a more of an appealing environment to live under than under a society where they're going to take a normal person, wreck them under the law, throw their ass in jail and fucking destroy them and sit there and cry about law and order, law and order, law and order, when it's all bullshit anyway. There's no law and order. The threshold for corruption's too high. So for me as a person, you said I'm a chess player. If I'm a chess player and I analyze the chessboard, I have geographical freedom. I have financial freedom. I'm going to live in a society. Why don't I live in a society where I have the most possible moves to make on a chessboard? Where would I go? I'd go somewhere where my money can benefit me. I don't have billions. I'm not a senator's son, but I have enough to live in some other countries and be protected in some regards. That's just an intelligent chess move. I explained this at length in a video. All that context all removed, I was talking about speeding fines. They take the misogyny thing. They take something about rape, which is imaginary because I have no criminal charges against females, against anything in my life ever. They put it together. They take in the corruption from Romania. They throw that in. They whip it up and they throw it out to the world. And it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. What's the next one? I said women can't drive.
So let's stay on that one real quick.
Sure.
I mean, I can understand how that's going to piss off certain people when you're explaining corruption and law and order, because where does jealousy and envy come from? If you think about it, jealousy and envy comes from what? Sometimes
usually.
It comes from people that no matter what they do, they can never be Tate.
Yeah.
They can never, ever. Like we were talking to Graham Stephan and he says, what do you think about Tate? What do you think about everybody that's going to try to do his affiliate marketing? I said, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
I said, he's not duplicatable.
Yeah.
So non-duplicatable people like you are annoying to people that are, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Correct.
They can't sit there and say, no matter how many motivational books they read,
right,
no matter how many videos of you they watch, they cannot talk like you and tell the story.
Yeah.
That produces envy and jealousy.
Right.
And you can see how someone like this can be taken out of context saying, he must be a criminal for wanting to go to a place that doesn't have law and order.
Absolutely. And I understand why they would say that. Now, what's actually interesting is Bucharest, the capital of Romania, where I live, is statistically 25 times safer than a city like London. It's not even a dangerous place. It's the most Christian country on earth, 99.3% Christian in the last census. There's churches everywhere. It's highly religious. It's a very nice place. It's just a different economic bracket. It's nothing to do about Romania specifically. If you go to any second world country in the world with a different economic bracket, the corruption is going to be more accessible. The price is lower. Humans are corrupt. Every single institution on the face of the planet that is run by humans, which is currently all of them at some degree, is corrupt. All of them. Whether it's doctors, financial, judicial, law and order, the monetary system, it's all completely and utterly corrupt. And to sit here and believe that any of them are just and fair, I think we've just learned in the last few years that we can see that even simple things like keeping people alive, even medicine, is completely corrupt from head to toe. All of it is. So you have to understand that. And then you have to look at the chessboard and go, okay, if it's all completely and utterly corrupt, and I understand that there are certain people who get to play the game on cheat mode. Do I want to be able to play the game on cheat mode if I'm going to try and be the best version of myself? Well, yes, I could possibly do that in Nigeria. I could play on cheat mode. I could possibly play on cheat mode in Croatia. I could possibly play on cheat mode here. Here, I have to stick to the rules. If I have to obey the rules of chess against a person who can move their pieces however they want, I'm going to be perpetually crushed for eternity. So it makes that's just smart business sense to me to sit there and go, you know what? Fuck it. Let's change the board. Let's move it out. Let's reset up the pieces and let's play this way. And this is nothing specific with the country I live. I have absolute respect for the country I live. This is just human nature. This is the nature of systems and how they work and the nature of the first world, second world, third world. This is just how the world works. So I say these things and people want to sit here and try and they mix it up. They take that and they try and mix it up with some girl shit and try and pretend I'm not talking about basic things like speeding fines. That's really what I'm talking about. And we can have a long, detailed argument about how corrupt America is, but I like to think that most people with the brain understand the kind of shit that's going down in America. So America's absolutely corrupt as well. It's just a corrupt world. That's
When's
humans.
the last time you lived in the States?
I left when I was a child.
So you haven't lived in the States in decades?
Never.
Wow. But you go back quite frequently.
That might come to an end.
That might come to an end.
Maybe Miami.
Miami.
But you use an analogy to kind of set you up for this. Use an analogy with Pomp whenever you did that interview.
Yeah.
You said, listen, if you two basketball teams, you play a pickup game for $10,000, no referees, no judges, no nothing, just go for it, guys. Do you think there'd be any cheating going on? Fuck yeah.
Yep.
Of course.
Yep.
So now, what was the analogy or the metaphor that you made for government and systems?
So I say, if you accept that in a basic pickup game of basketball for $10,000 without referees and judges, humans are going to naturally avert to cheating to make sure they win. Do you think the people who are in charge of the world, for the power and control of the entire populace and all of its resources, are not going to consider cheating to win? You think it's not going to cross their mind to just go, you know what, let's just change this little bit?
I was thinking.
You're going to sit there and believe, no, it's fair. Nothing is fair. Nothing has ever been fair. If you've lived a life of genuine hardship, the first thing you will learn is that nothing is ever fair. I've never seen a fair fight on the street. I've never seen a fair relationship. I've never seen a fucking person lose his girlfriend or lose their husband fairly. I've never seen a fair incident on the fucking road when someone gets crushed by a truck. The world is a very unfair place. And humans come along and we purport this idea, don't worry, if we're in charge, we'll make it fair. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Nothing is ever, ever fair. And the human inclination is to win, as it should be. And the more powerful you are and the higher the stakes, the higher your inclination to win, as it should be. This is human nature. You wouldn't be able to put yourself in a position of power if you thought any other way. So if you're going to sit there and accept the basis that we're going to cheat in a basic basketball game, that people cheat in football games, that people cheat in poker, and people cheat in all this bullshit, and then say no, but they're not going to cheat to control the world, then you're asinine. Right. It's all a fucking lie. It's all a cheat. All of it.
There's a part of it that somebody, tell me who actually believes the government, everything they do is right and there isn't corruption in government. What percentage of the populace in any country believes that? It's got to be a very small percentage of
on both sides. I think most people, whether side of the political aisle you understand, you recognize that corruption exists.
You have selective hearing where you will typically only see the good on the side you support, and you will typically only see the bad on the side you don't support. But I don't know anybody who doesn't believe there is a level of corruption going on in the government.
Well, then you say that, but anyone who ever advocates for more government or more law, whether they believe there's corruption or otherwise, are acting adverse to the truth, right? If you believe an institution is corrupt, and then you say, I want them to have more power, well, then what? So you have to look at the people who are always advocating for more law. Those people who are advocating for more law or stricter controls, to a degree, are on the side of a corrupt institution. And it's actually very difficult because we need laws. Nobody wants to live in a failed state without law. Of course, humans need laws completely. But dying empires, this was said by somebody more intelligent than me, but I can't remember their name. Dying empires adopt laws like a sick man adopts medicine. And you'll see by some of these countries in the world, especially the first world countries, as things get harder and harder and harder, the government only has one answer to all problems: law. Energy crisis is out of control.
You do need law and order, though.
You need law and order. Of course you do.
Order.
Absolutely you do. But I'm saying that you get to a point where you end up, you wonder how you end up in a tyrannical society. You wonder how you end up in a society where it's so hard for the average person to survive against the law itself. Because when something bad happens inside of a first world nation, the first answer is just create more law. There's an energy crisis, make more law. There's too much crime, make more law. Inflation, make more law. More law, more law, more law. Print more laws, print more laws, print more laws. You end up with a book of law like this, and it can be thrown at anybody at any time. And this is what's actually interesting about some societies in the world. I live in a country, Romania, which is one of the poorest countries in Europe. It's a homogenous society, but it's very poor. The police drive Dacias that can't go more than 65 miles an hour. Underfunded police force. There's no crime. There's not this big, huge book of law. It's just don't kill anybody. Don't be an idiot. And just live your life. pretty normal. And it's like that in many places in the world. But in other societies and other empires, they're like, no, we need a law for everything. A law about how you use your telephone, a law about how you listen to the radio, a law about how you do bank transfer, a law about this, a law about law. And to a degree, it ends up sooner on a long enough time frame. If you're going to make new laws every single day into eternity, where are you going to end up?
Is that just because Romania just trusts Judeo-Christian values and that's just sort of how they abide?
I'd like to think it's that innocent, but I think a lot of it is also down to enforcement. I don't think they have the mechanisms to enforce laws, so they don't pass them. Whereas in other nations, they have the mechanism to enforce the law, so they pass them. So, but my point is, if I lived in a nation where they're printing 5,000 new laws a week, I know that's going to end up in tyranny. Regardless, sooner or later, if you're going to make new laws every fucking day, sooner or later it's going to be impossible for me to go outside my house. But that's it. And you end up in a society where that actually literally came true in certain states in America. You couldn't leave your fucking house. That's what happens. And it's a sad state of the world, and I'm not a pessimist in any regard. I'm just trying to analyze the chessboard and be as perspicacious as possible and set myself up in a position where I feel like I can live a life true to myself and true to God and be free and enjoy the freedom of my family and just do what I want to do without hurting anybody. That's all I'm trying to do.
Well, let me ask you, you think maybe from your perspective, you have a blind spot? And I'd love for you to push back on this one
Sure.
here. The blind spot is, the only life you've ever lived is the life of a alpha raised by an alpha who raised two boys who are alphas, who the way you describe your father was a guy that pushed you guys, challenged you guys. He brought you guys together to back each other up. And all you know is I can fight, I can play chess, I can outthink you, I can get out of things. I have the gift of gap. I can talk. I can do. So that's the only lens you have where, if we were living in times, biblical times, a guy like you would probably end up being the emperor. A guy like you who can do all of those things, you're probably going to make it to the top.
Correct.
But they created laws and orders for guys like you to not bully the little guy, to protect the little guy. That's how they came up with the gum to call it the great equalizer, where naturally you're supposed to gravitate to the top.
Yep.
Naturally.
Agreed.
Because of all those things you bring to the table. People want a guy like even in New York, many times, Brownsville, they wanted some of the mob there because the mob prevented girls from being taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
But they still broke the law. So there was still that element of, so do you think a part of it where for you, yes, a person may say, I can see why Tate wants to be in a place where there's fewer law and order versus in a place where there's high law and order, because it doesn't really defend them, doesn't protect them.
That's a really good point of view. And it actually ties in very interesting to another point I want to make, where there's a correlation between people who are free thinkers and people who have opinions which differ from the norm and their testosterone levels. I don't know if you've ever seen this. But the higher your testosterone level, the more likely you are to stand up and say something that the group doesn't agree with. The basic premise behind it biologically is you're more prepared to defend your idea. If you stand up against 5 men and say, you're wrong, I believe this, at some point, and especially in history, that can become violent. So if you don't have the capability or at least the bravery to stand up and face the possibility of violence, you're more likely to just comply with the group thing. So they've done a whole bunch of studies that proves somebody who is combative, not in a negative way, but combative as a whole in regards to not physically afraid of having a confrontation, let's say, is more likely to have an independent idea as opposed to somebody who is the complete opposite. They're just pure groupthink because fish swim in schools, right? That's how they protect themselves. So it's an interesting point you have there. And also that can be extrapolated if you look at the political parties of the world or you look at the different ideas, etc. You can usually look at someone and kind of see their politics. Sometimes you can look at them and go, yeah, I get it. Right. So there's a lot. Biology is a huge part to play with it. And yeah, I agree with you. And you're totally right. My view, like every other person's view on earth, is biased. And I have a large degree of individualism and a large degree of I can fix this myself or I'll be okay by myself. And that's how I was raised. And it's also my genetic makeup. And you're right. I completely agree with you. And I understand that. And that's why each to their own. I'm not saying everybody should decide to go move to Serbia, because you're right. There's mobsters in Serbia that will take advantage of a whole bunch of people completely. But for myself and my own personal chessboard, that's how I've set up life. And that's why the students who follow me and the kids I talk to, I say, listen, life is extremely difficult as a man. It's very fucking hard. There is no way I can tell you to win unless you're a top tier man. I can't sit here and give you a cheat code that allows you to stay a loser and win. I can only tell you what I've done. I became extremely wealthy. I became extremely capable. I became extremely smart. I developed a vast network of individuals that nobody wants to mess with. And I set up a life that makes me difficult to damage. That's what I did. You're saying, how can I comply, and stay weak and stay stupid and be safe from tyranny? And I say to you, you can't do that. That's why I teach the tenets I teach. And that's also why I think they find me so threatening, because I'm teaching people to do exactly that. I say, listen, there's no strength of mind or strength of opinion without strength of body. First thing you need to do is go train. Don't care what you think. Don't care what you think. Too small. First thing you need to do is go train. That's number one. If you think 2 + 2 is 4, and I think 2 + 2 is 5, and we're going to argue this to the end, it's going to be 5. So you better go do something.
Newsflash. 2 and 2 is 5 now.
That's the reality, but that's the reality of Earth, right? And I teach kids this reality. I teach men this reality. And by even doing basic things like teaching young men to go and be strong physically, which is, I'd like to think we live in a world where that's all seen as a good thing. There are people in the world who sit there and go, wait. Making them physically stronger is going to affect our ability to change the narrative in their minds in real time with our matrix programming. That is negative.
Do you think there's wisdom in not saying everything you're thinking about? So for example, Logan's going to have a big following that's going to say, well, he's wiser than you, Tate, because look at you now. You got banned and he's not. You're smart. He's wise. He knew what his limits are because he knows at what levels somebody is above him, and he knows how to handle that, versus you can't control your thoughts and you say whatever that's on your mind. That's what got you in trouble. Hence, Logan is wiser than Tate.
Interesting point. And I would actually agree with that point, because as much as people think I'm speaking my mind, trust me, this is 20% of the things I think. There are limits to the world, and there's times to say them, there's times not to say them. However, I feel a duty that Logan doesn't feel, and the duty is to my children's children. And I believe certain things need to be said, and it goes beyond just trying to keep my YouTube channel. I have a duty. I have a sense of duty, which is he doesn't feel. He doesn't care. He will say anything that's said, and he will allow anyone to get banned. He doesn't give a fuck as long as he gets to continue on his channel. Please don't delete my channel. I need to be a clown on this channel. That's all he cares about. I care about the world as a whole. I don't give a fuck. I don't care if they delete me for everywhere. I don't care if I go missing from all of social media forever. I don't care. I have money. I'm fine. I'll go to the mountains. I'll take my car. I'll chill. I have a good life. It doesn't matter to me, right? We have different objectives. So yeah, if my objective was primarily number one concern, keep YouTube, then of course I'd talk differently. But that was never my objective. So people will argue he's smarter. I would just argue he has far less important intentions. And I'll argue that he has less moral character and he's quicker to sell out. A lot of the things I say, I'll also be honest, a lot of things I say, I really don't think were bannable offenses. I just think I said things that got so popular. I don't think it's the things I said. I think it's how many times they were listened to.